Welcome to the first episode of the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show presented by Two Hats Ranch. I'm the voice of the Bulldogs, Rob Bentley, alongside longtime color analyst Sandy Gholston as we get set for Ferris State Football. The Bulldogs open up the 2024 season on the road Saturday night at Konnor Smith Stadium against the Gorillas of Pittsburgh State. Sandy, I know I'm excited. 8:05 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff coming up here on Saturday night, and looking forward to what should be another outstanding season here for the Bulldogs.
You know, the excitement always just continues to build and build and build, and it's been so long since we've been able to call a football game. And it's exciting to get back out here for this Week 0 matchup. We have Week 0. We saw Week 0 at the major Division I level and how exciting that was. Some really exciting games that fans saw. And I think you look at Division II Week 0, and boy, I think the marquee matchup in the nation, I don't think it's any question, it's going to be Ferris State at Pitt State.
Consensus top 5 matchup in the country. Ferris State number 3 by both the American Football Coaches Association and D2Football.com. Pitt State number 4 in one poll, number 6 in the other. But these two teams, two well-known blue blood type teams here in Division II football.
Yeah, I think when you start to look around the nation, and obviously the MIAA, which Pittsburgh State is a member of, has been a really strong conference for a number of years, right there at or near the top of Division II. And then the GLIAC, you know, when you think of the success that the GLIAC has had, and, you know, with Ferris State, and obviously Grand Valley State has been really good for a number of years. And so you got a clash of two of the elite programs from two of the elite conferences. And so what more could you ask for to really help get the season going for Division II football?
Pitt State, the two-time defending MIAA champions. We'll talk more about Pitt State, have a game preview later on in the show. We'll hear from senior linebacker Konnor, a former Bulldog, now a new Bulldog, as he comes back from the University of Oklahoma. We'll hear from athletic director Steve Brockelbank here on the first show as well, and certainly talk more about both the GLIAC and Division II football. An exciting time of the year. Classes back in session here at Ferris State, and really it's football type of season here on the Ferris State campus.
Yeah, there's no question that campus is jumping. Today, as we film this, it's the first day of classes. Classes are getting going this week, and that's exciting and bringing a lot of energy on campus. And so, it just makes for a great atmosphere. So then you got classes getting going, and then on top of classes getting going, you've got football getting going. And so the guys have been out and they've been practicing. Other sports are getting started as well. But it's just really a fun time to be on campus, and football is certainly a huge part of that.
Of course, the Bulldogs, a full 11-game schedule thanks to the addition of Week 0. This game scheduled last spring between Ferris State and Pitt State, and really credit goes out to both programs for stepping up and taking on this challenge against a very tough opponent here to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, you got two proud programs that we talked about, two of the blue blood programs, as you mentioned, and yet they embraced this matchup. This is a matchup that certainly there's a great reward if you can win this matchup, in terms of what it's going to look like on your resume. But it's also it's a tough matchup. It's hard. It's especially hard for the Bulldogs to go on the road at Pitt State. And so it's a big challenge, but it's also an enormous opportunity for these teams.
Ferris State comes in obviously off an 8-3 season a year ago, maybe a disappointing finish in terms of getting beat by Grand Valley State in the first round of the playoffs. Pitt State the following week took Grand Valley to the wire as well, fell 24-21. So two teams that have experience in the Division II playoffs. The Bulldogs, a nation-leading 9 consecutive trips to the Division II playoffs, and Pitt State has been right there each of the last couple of years. We know how good this team is based on what we saw at Top Taggart Field in the second round of the playoffs just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we saw that up close and personal, and that's a very good football program, very good, traditionally very good defensive program in terms of what they do on that side of the football, and very efficient offensively. A program with a proud tradition, just like Ferris State and just like many of the other ones. And when you look at Super Region 3 and how stacked Super Region 3 is, a couple of reasons are going to be two teams that are going to be locking up in that Week 0 game.
Never been to Konnor Smith Stadium in Pittsburgh, Kansas, also known as the Jungle, but heard it's going to be a very loud place, a sellout expected. Should be a great atmosphere by all accounts here as the Bulldogs open up the season.
Yeah, and give credit to Pittsburgh State. They've done a great job of really marketing this game, and of course, you guys have been marketing this game as well, and a sellout crowd expected, and it's just going to be a tremendous atmosphere. I'm actually excited to really experience this atmosphere that I've heard so much about. So could be hearing a lot of welcome Welcome to the Jungle being played as the two teams prepare to take the field and after they take the field.
Of course, the game will be streamed by the MIAA Network, pay-per-view online, watch party at Buffalo Wild Wings in Big Rapids. Of course, alumni owned and operated by the Carmody family. Proud supporters of the Ferris State Bulldogs. We'll have the broadcast for you as well right here on Sunny 97.3. Pregame coverage 7 p.m. for the Johnson Automotive pregame show. And looking forward to having the call as the Bulldogs take the field. Going to be exciting just to watch this team in action after what we've seen through 3 weeks of fall camp.
You know, it's really been fun to watch this team. And you know, it feels like camp just went so fast, but things just really went by so fast. But at the same time, it was very productive for the coaches and for the players. And it all builds up to this, getting into game week and then looking ahead to that trip out to Pittsburgh, Kansas. This is what these guys work so hard for in the preseason, in the off season, and everything that they've done since the end of last season to get ready for games just like this one.
Of course, we'll have more coverage of Ferris State football throughout the year right here on the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show, presented by Two Hats Ranch of Big Rapids. Some exciting guests, players, coaches here over the course of the year, and really a great new venture that we're looking excited and looking forward to really being able to host this show each and every week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun for us to really use this platform to get to the heart of what Bulldog football is all about and how the season is going and letting the fans join us on this journey to be able to bring some inside scoops and to really get to the people that make Bulldog football special. So I think it's going to be an exciting venture, not only for us to be able to bring it to the fans, but I think it's going to be well received by the Bulldog fan base.
We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more of the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show as we're joined by linebacker Konnor after this quick break. And welcome back to the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show. Rob Bentley and Sandy Gholston with you as we bring in our first guest on today's show, Ferris State senior linebacker Konnor. And Konnor, great to have you here on our first episode, and welcome back to Ferris State.
I appreciate it. It's a blessing to be here and to be back and be talking with you guys.
What's it been like being back here at Ferris State, I guess, here over the course of the summer, now into about 3 weeks of fall camp?
It's been everything that you'd think it's going to be. I've been here since early May, got up here and found a place to live, and we've been working and stacking days ever since then, honestly. I didn't do anything this spring with a football team or anything. I had a job, and so it's been a continual grind, and I feel really good about where I'm at personally and where this team's going.
I know you were a member of 2 national championship teams, 2021, 2022. Before we get into the rest of it and talking about what's coming up this week, maybe talk about that experience being a part of 2 great teams and obviously helping restore the tradition here at Ferris State football.
Yeah, it was amazing to be a part of those 2 teams, and the 2 years prior here to that, 19 and during COVID, going through a lot of things and growing as men and as a team. Those 2 national championship runs were awesome, and I had different roles in both of the 2 different seasons. But I think last season being gone, I still was for the first time in my life a fan, which was really cool. I had some pride and really truthfully cared about what a team was going to do. And I actually got to come home for the GV game at GV. It was our bye weekend, and I watched quite a few of them online, and it was fun, and it was also tough at the same time. It was bittersweet. And so really excited to take some of those things that I've learned in being here in those 4 years and what I learned when I was gone. I learned a lot about football, about life, who I am, and try to bring all that together and figure out how I can best help this team and reach its highest potential that we have this season.
I know last year you were at the University of Oklahoma. Maybe talk about how that experience helped you and what that experience was like just being away from Ferris State for a year or so.
The biggest thing for me was I had to learn a little bit more about football, X's and O's wise. The demand there at Oklahoma and with playing not necessarily for Coach Venables, it was the next level, and I hadn't quite had that knowledge of the game that I had to have. And I was forced and pushed right into it and learned a lot, very quickly, and continued to progress. And now it's fun to be able to come back here and kind of implement a lot of those things, whether it's technique or whether it is actual scheme of how football is played. That was probably the number one thing, just trying to grow more in my knowledge of football and X's and O's, not just necessarily going out there and being a good football player, athletically. So that was awesome. And moving away from home was also really tough for me. It was hot down there. Today we were just talking. It's like the first hot day we've really had up here. And it was like this or hot. It was like 100 plus every day, and humid. And it was a grind. So I'm looking forward to going to Pitt State and playing in the heat. Like I was wearing a long sleeve. I don't know if you guys noticed, but like all camp, I tried to have a long sleeve shirt on, just prepping for it. But all good things. And I learned a lot, and I'm ready to roll and put it into this team.
Konnor, I wanted to talk to you about Bulldog Brotherhood because, when you were here before and, a part of 2 national championship teams, you had a group that you were really tight with that you went through so many things with. Talk about that Bulldog Brotherhood and then, seeing guys like Pline and Murphy and others that are doing well at the professional level. And but you guys are really tight and you guys are really in it together.
Yeah, no doubt. I always lived in the so-called football house. There's 8 of us. And but it goes back even before me. When I got here as a freshman, there was a lot of guys that do embody that brotherhood thing, and it was really cool and kind of taught me what stuff can be like if you do buy in and everybody really truthfully cares for each other. And so through the time that I was here, we had a lot of guys that really did buy in, and we all lived in that house, and so it wasn't always pretty. Sometimes it got stinky. Sometimes, how it goes. But like you said, Murph and Luray too. Luray's playing in the CFL, or not the CFL, the Indoor Football League with Centel. And truthfully, just a bunch of guys that I love and we do a lot for. And I'm super happy that Ferris is the thing that kind of brought us all together, and we all got to buy in on that and gain that level of trust and respect for each other. So Ferris Brotherhood is one of the biggest reasons that I came back. Best time of my life here and best friends from here. So I hope that I can try to show that what that's all about to the younger generation, the guys that are coming in here. And the team is a little younger than it once was. You don't have 15 or 26th and 7th year guys, So just trying to show them what it's all about and let them cherish the things that I truthfully grew up to love. So.
Well, I tell you what, you might have a good career in radio, because that was a great segue into my next question, which was for you to come back into the program and some familiar faces, obviously, to you, but some new guys too, and to talk about reintegrating yourself into the program and kind of reestablishing yourself and building relationships with the guys that you did not know from when you were here before.
100%. To take a step back really quick, when I left and went to Oklahoma and joined a new team, that was different than coming back here, obviously, and I learned a lot doing so. Had to come into a team with no respect, everything to prove, and try to truthfully make friends and make relationships with staff and players. And so to reverse back to now, came back here and everybody had complete open arms. Not a single person had a bad attitude about me joining, even in the linebacker room with Jason and Sefa. It was everything I could have hoped for and then some. We had a retreat, I think on July 13th or somewhere in there. And I'd been around, for a couple months and in the weight room and working out at night every day with all the guys. But I got my first chance to kind of talk to the team and just say how thankful I was to not have to have any doubts or worry in my mind that anybody thinks I have bad intentions in being here. And I really just can't wait to get on the field and enjoy it all the last 4 or 5 months, work.
What's it going to be like for you? Because, when you were here before, you were the guy that was coming up and now you're this might sting a little bit, that you're the elder statesman now. You're the older guy on the team now. What's that like to be that older guy and to be able to impart some of that wisdom on some of the younger guys and to bring this Bulldog family together as we get ready for the start of the season?
It's humbling. Really quick, getting thrown into a vocal leadership role. I've always been a little bit vocal, but to kind of try to take on that job, you have to learn a lot and try to bite your tongue when you think you need to, and got to step out of your boundary and comfort zone when you have to. So it's been fun. I think it's a good thing for me as a man to grow and learn. And but you're right, it's different. When I was here before, I had a couple guys that would get on me and just let me absolutely have it. So it's just all about, I think, paying it forward and trying to be the best leader that I can be for this team, and using all those things that I learned in the past 5 years of college football to try to best help us get to where we want to go.
Yeah. And then lastly, before I kick it back to Rob, this is a young team. I went and looked down the roster, and I'm like, it's a lot of sophomores, a lot of juniors, and you got some seniors, of course, as well. But how have these young guys, some of which who have gotten experience when they were young, and now we're starting to get a little bit older juniors that have been in the program now for a few years, how have those guys responded to this preseason camp that you guys have had?
I think that a lot of the young guys are really hungry. Like you said, there's some juniors like Carson and Brady's class, and that only redshirted once. So there's that kind of weird thing when you look at the roster of some guys redshirted twice, some guys redshirted once, a couple guys didn't redshirt. So, but I think that everybody's really hungry and wants to be on the football field. And the beauty in that is obviously there are only so many guys that do go out and play, but it creates competitive depth. You know, everybody's wanting to get on the field. So even those 3 and 4 guys on the depth chart are fighting with each other all the time in a good way to try to make each other better. And that also gives us an advantage when there's a bunch of young guys that want to play on special teams. Personally, that was kind of a big part of my role in 21. I was on every single special team, and I tried to make a difference there, And so there's going to be guys on this team that have to step up and embody that role and realize that some things are bigger than themselves, and we're all just trying to go win a national championship. It's a blessing to have good young talent on the team, So I think that sums it up.
Yes, sir.
Konnor, maybe talk about how the Bulldog defense has kind of taken that next step, going back to those 2 national championship years, and obviously carried over into last season and this season, really becoming one of those elite defenses here in the country.
Yeah. Shout out to Hodge and Tony Jr. and Caserta, and Shreve's been doing a lot this summer. And of course, Coach Smith up front, always laughing, but they've all been here for a while now. When I first got here, besides, I guess the only exception to that is Caserta. When I first got here, I had like 4 or 5 linebacker coaches within a matter of 2 years. And Caserta came in 21, and they've all been here. They all bought in. I think they all have kind of bounced ideas off each other, and as far as what they want to do and how they want to accomplish things, whether it be the practice plan or schematically. So I have complete love for them. I'm happy they're all still here. It's a huge reason I was like, let's go, just come back and be with all of them. But it's something that we hung our hat on, especially in 22. Like, it was a sad thing when somebody had 100 yards rushing. We were all very upset. And so that's a really fun thing to be a part of. And just trying to reach excellence all the time, I think is something that you need in life, and in football, it carries over. So I hope that we can be everything that we want to be and reach all of our goals on defense this fall.
Finally, here, before we let you go, maybe talk about how excited you're going to be when you take the field Saturday night, and what Bulldog fans can expect to see out of this Ferris State team this season.
I'm stoked. There's this video on YouTube from like 2011. It's Welcome to the Jungle, Pitt State highlights, and it's this funny montage. And I've been playing it and sending it in the team group chat like once a week, like just trying to get guys. I was like, just get your mind right, like let's go. Like I can't wait. A little bit speechless about it. Been a while since I've been on a football field. Been a while since I got to lead some guys going into battle like that. So I think that something to expect from us this season as a team is just we're going to have a lot of fight in us. Everybody's hungry and everybody's ready to roll.
Well, Konnor, thanks for the time, and best of luck to the Bulldogs this Saturday night. Looking forward to being down there in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and should be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
We'll be back with more of the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show after this quick break here on the Bulldog Sports Network. Welcome back, everyone, to the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show presented by Two Hats Ranch. Rob Bentley and Sandy Gholston with you. Time to talk about Division II football here on the national stage and, of course, in the GLIAC as we enter Week 0 this Saturday night. Ferris State, of course, taking the field on Saturday night. One of just 3 GLIAC teams in action this weekend here on the opening weekend of the season. Minnesota Duluth will be at Northern Michigan. That's a Thursday night game. Michigan Tech at Bemidji State, a couple non-league games. That's also a Thursday night contest. So The Bulldogs going to get an early start on the season, at least more so than some of the other GLIAC teams here this weekend.
One of the good things about week 0, Rob, is the additional opportunity to be able to put together a full schedule. And I think there are a lot of teams that are really thankful for this opportunity. And you mentioned 3 GLIAC teams, Northern, Tech, Ferris State, getting those opportunities. And it's creating not only expanded opportunities for competition for the student athletes and the coaches, but it's also really helping a lot of teams that just kind of need that little additional help. And it also gets a little extra buzz going into what would be the traditional start to the regular season. But now we have that expanded schedule with week 0.
Of course, that expanded schedule adopted by the Division II Football Committee last spring, and that really allowed teams like Ferris State, Pittsburgh State. We'll talk more about a couple other national games involving teams that were able to schedule some of these week 0 games as well here shortly, but really allowed them an opportunity to schedule another game and do so over an 11 or 12-week period here, where still gives you a chance maybe at a bye week coming up here later on in the year.
Yeah, I think that's another thing too, with that bye week being in there. Later into the season, I think is going to maybe be in the best interest of student athletes and the coaches. So, I mean, I think it's just a win-win situation all the way around, and it's great to see the teams that are able to take advantage of it.
We'll use this segment each and every week to talk about some of the national matchups as well. And this week, here in week 0, you got a couple other big matchups. Delta State, a team that's had a lot of success as of late at Mars Hill. Albany State at Valdosta State. Valdosta, another team that's right there poised near the top of the national rankings.
Yeah, Valdosta State is a program that, traditionally you talk about the blue bloods of Division II, and you certainly got to talk about Valdosta there. And they dipped a little bit, but they seem to be a team that's on the rise. That's going to be a really good matchup for the Blazers.
North Carolina Pembroke will host Wingate. Benedict, a team that's made the playoffs the last couple of years, hosting Virginia State. Angelo State, another playoff team here in recent years, will be on the road at Fort Hays State. We made the trip to Fort Hays State back in 2017 for the Division II playoffs. Our only other trip to Kansas here. So the Fort Hays State Tigers going to be playing at home in the state of Kansas this weekend as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. Angelo State is one of those teams that just always seems to be really good. And, Fort Hays State, you're a little bit more familiar with them, from your old stomping grounds back in Nebraska. But that's a program that also feels like it's coming back as well. So I think when you look at some of the marquee matchups, that's certainly one of them. It may not be the marquee matchup. It is to their fans, of course, but it's certainly one of the great matchups in week 0.
Of course, that's one name I never like to say, Fort Hays State. Nebraska Kearney and Fort Hays State, arch rivals when I was in school at Nebraska Kearney and working there before I came to Ferris State almost 25 years ago. But that still seems like that's an arch rival, kind of like the Ferris Grand Valley matchup.
Oh, I remember that when we went on that trip to Fort Hays. And yeah, I know you had some feelings there as we went to Fort Hays. And boy, I tell you what, when you think of some of those early moments relatively early moments in Coach Anise's tenure at Ferris, where you're like, man, that was a really big win. I think that win at Fort Hays State in the playoffs, I think that was a huge win.
Of course, Reggie Bell had a huge game in the playoffs that year for Ferris State. The Bulldogs went on to face Harding the next round, maybe not quite the finish they wanted in 2017, but really that playoff run really kind of helped set the stage for what followed 2018, reaching the national championship game. Some big wins along the way on the road in the playoffs in 2018.
Yeah, that was a huge win in terms of going on the road and against a team. Obviously, if you're on the road in the playoffs, that means the other team is favored. And I'm not sure what a lot of people really expected of us coming into that game, but boy, we left the cold of Michigan and went to the warmth of Hays, Kansas, and boy, what just an incredible performance by the Bulldogs. And I think it really gave them the confidence to go on the road against a quality program and get a win in the playoffs.
Of course, the MIAA, we mentioned Fort Hays State at home. Of course, Pittsburgh State will be at home on Saturday night, hosting Ferris State, another MIAA team at home. Number 22, Northwest Missouri State, going to play host to 11th-ranked Minnesota State. A couple teams the Bulldogs have seen in the playoffs here since 2018, and obviously both very good football programs with a lot of tradition.
Yeah, that's probably the number 2 marquee matchup on the schedule for week 0. I mean, that's going to be a great one. Minnesota State, you mentioned we've had a chance to see them before in the playoffs, in 2018, and that was going to be the total opposite weather-wise of what we're going to see in Kansas, what we saw at Minnesota State and Mankato in the freezing cold, but a great Bulldog win in that contest. And Northwest Missouri, we've had a chance to see them a few times, and that's a great program. Again, you talk about the blue bloods of Division II, Northwest Missouri State right there.
Of course, Ferris State picked to win the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. As we take a look at the GLIAC preseason poll, the Bulldogs #1 received 4 first-place votes, Grand Valley State #2, and of course, those two appear poised to really vie for that conference title, but Davenport's been a team that's been right there here in recent years.
Yeah, certainly Ferris State and Grand Valley State coming in looking like the two teams to beat in the GLIAC, but again, we've seen this before, and we know Coach Sparky McEwen very well, and had a chance to talk to him at GLIAC Media Day, and he's going to have his team ready to go. And so Davenport's going to be a very dangerous team, and you never know who else is going to emerge. We know Ryan Brady at Saginaw Valley is working on building a program, and some other programs on the way up. We got Roosevelt University that's coming into the GLIAC, so that's going to give the conference a new look as well.
Of course, we'll talk more about that matchup when we get a little bit closer to homecoming on October 5th. The Bulldogs hosting Roosevelt. Interesting side note, that'll be the 400th GLIAC game, I believe, for Ferris State, and the first ever for Roosevelt, another Lakers team entering the conference.
Yeah, you talk about the two opposite ends of the spectrum right there, with Roosevelt just coming in and Ferris State obviously very established in terms of that number of games. And so, but again, it's really great to expand the conference. It creates more opportunities, gets the Bulldogs into that Chicago market. So really a great addition to the GLIAC.
Going to be interesting to see here. Ferris State got an early jump on preseason camp by playing this week 0 game. How that really impacts some of the teams that are getting off to a quick start playing here on this opening weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a great opportunity. Bulldogs getting that early start, and they knew they were going to have to. And the thing about coming into a season and playing Pittsburgh State right off the bat, that you don't have a lot of time to really mess around. You got to really get into it, and so. That was the focus of the Bulldogs, and it's going to be the focus of a lot of teams, especially teams that have tough, really early season matchups.
Of course, this year in Division II football, there's some rule changes as well, and maybe the biggest one involves the new 2-minute warning, not called a warning, but a 2-minute timeout with 2 minutes to go at the end of the first half and at the end of the fourth quarter. So that's going to be interesting here in college football.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a staple of professional football. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that is used. And it's going to be an opportunity, obviously, to get a free timeout. And you're going to have to, or you're going to have the opportunity, at least I should say, to manage around that 2-minute timeout. So looking forward to seeing how the coaches use that as well, because, timeouts can be precious in a tight game coming down the stretch.
Of course, last year in the GLIAC and many of the other conferences, the MIAA was actually one of the early leaders. Instant replay involving the officials. This year, they take it a step further with some new legislation by the NCAA, and coaches allowed to use tablets on the sideline as well with a couple camera angles. So I know the Bulldogs looking forward to that new technology and having iPads on the sideline coming up on Saturday night. Taking on a MIAA team that is also using the same protocols.
Yeah, there's no sense in resisting technology because technology is going to be there. And so the thing that you want to do is really leverage that technology as best you can and to take advantage of it. And it's just another tool, I think hopefully a positive tool for the coaches and the players to really be able to learn maybe a little bit more visually during the course of the game, to be able to make adjustments a little bit quicker during the course of the game by being able to do it in a visual manner. So hopefully it's going to be a positive for teams.
Of course, we hope that they'll use it to their advantage, and I hope we don't see a lot of iPads flying around the sidelines here over the course of the season.
Yeah, well, iPads are they're precious, and so you're starting to look at your budget, and you don't want to see too many iPads flying around. But emotions can run high on the sidelines of a football field. So we'll see how things go. But I think overall it's going to be a big positive for college football. Before
we wrap up this segment here on both the GLIAC and the national scene here in Division II football, we would like to give our thoughts out to Brandon Meisner, of course, the founder of D2Football.com and a longtime supporter of Division II football. We hope that his health continues to improve.
Yeah, Brandon and what he's been able to do for Division II college football, and he's just really helped to enhance the fan experience for college football with the work that he's been doing with D2 and the team that he's been able to pull together at D2Football.com. So we had a chance to meet Brandon in person a few times, I should say, at least down in Texas. And so, Division II college football is certainly rooting for Brandon, and we wish you nothing but the best.
We'll be back with more of the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show presented by Two Hats Ranch after this quick timeout. Welcome back to the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show, presented by Two Hats Ranch. Rob Bentley and Sandy Gholston with you as we preview this Saturday night season opener for the Ferris State Bulldogs, taking on the Pittsburgh State Gorillas at Kearney Smith Stadium in Pittsburgh, Kansas. The Bulldogs coming off an 8-3 season a year ago. Pitt State 11-2 last season, and both teams very similar in terms of the experience, the letter winners they have coming back here this fall.
Yeah, I think both teams feel pretty good about what they have coming back, and both teams know that expectations are going to be high. And that's just a tradition for both of these programs, for Pittsburgh State and for Ferris State. So, they feel pretty good when you build a program. It's a cliche, but you don't rebuild, you reload. And I think that's the mindset of these two programs as they come into this season and, frankly, as they come into any season.
When you look at Pittsburgh State, they have a new head coach, Tom Anthony, who was the defensive coordinator for 3 seasons for the Gorillas. Actually took last season off, had about a 6-month hiatus, and then the head coaching position came open with the loss of Brian Wright to Northern Arizona, and he stepped right back in. And by all accounts, they haven't missed a beat in terms of having a coaching staff intact with the loss of Wright.
Yeah, I think being able to try to keep when you lose your head coach and you lose your leader, what you hope is that you can keep some of that staff together from a continuity standpoint and have people that really understand the culture of your program and are really invested in getting this thing going back the way it has been going. And so that's what Pittsburgh State is hoping that they have, and that's what they feel like they have. And so, I expect a really tough Pittsburgh State team. I mean, that's a team with a great tradition, great coaches and great players, and it's going to be a tremendous atmosphere. So I would expect that they probably won't miss much of a beat.
Of course, Tom Anthony, the guy that really kind of built the Pitt State defense that we've seen here in recent years, and he had that unit playing extremely well a couple years ago in the playoffs here in Big Rapids when Ferris State defeated Pittsburgh State 17-14 back in 2022 en route to a second straight national championship. Last year, a very good defense as well. Fell to Grand Valley State in the second round, 24-21. So they've been right there on the cusp of maybe breaking through here in Super Region 3.
Yeah, they've been right there. And you mentioned part of what they hang their hat on is defense. And we certainly saw that in that national championship year, the second national championship year, where we really had to grind it away. Up 14-0, and then they come back and we're able to win that in the end. We're two really good defenses going at it, and us being a little bit more opportunistic and able to get that field goal to be able to put it away. So and in Pittsburgh State last year, you mentioned against Grand Valley, really tough game, a game they could have won and maybe feel like they should have won, but it just shows you where that program is, being that competitive against Ferris State, against Grand Valley State. Pittsburgh State certainly is right there, and they don't feel like they have to take a back seat to anybody. And again, you look at the national rankings, you look at Super Region 3, and you're going to see some familiar names that are going to continue to pop up.
Of course, they're led by a veteran quarterback, Chad Dodson, who is 23-3 as a starter for the Gorillas. Certainly a great nucleus of skill players back as well. Kind of like the Bulldogs, they've got a couple key players back at almost every position on the field.
Yeah, I mean, when you're 23-3, you're doing a lot right. And so that's one of the things that they're going to hang their hat on. And what you really like, especially in an early season game where you're playing a really tough opponent, is you want to have an experienced quarterback that's not going to get rattled in the moment. And so Pittsburgh State feels like they have that, and the Bulldogs feel like they have that as well, with some experience at quarterback. And you have to have that in one of these tough early season matchups in particular.
Of course, you flip it over to the defensive side. Defense kind of led in terms of the guy that's calling the signals by the linebacker, and they've got a good one in Jack Barkley, Division II All-American last year. Alex Gaskill, another returning starter back on the second level of that defense. Kind of like the Bulldogs with Konnor Neer, Jason Williams, Cepha returning. They've got a lot of experience at the linebacker position.
Well, I mean, those are the guys that really are going to be responsible for so many things. And you really want to have experienced linebackers. And again, two teams that do have experienced and very talented linebackers. Pittsburgh State, obviously very, very good defensively at all 3 levels, but particularly at linebacker. They feel like those guys are going to be swarming around, making plays, making sure the defense is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And that's what you look to from your defense. And so from that standpoint, it's going to be a really competitive, tough game that is probably going to be tight from start to finish.
Of course, the Gorillas have won the MIAA the last 2 years, as we mentioned earlier, 11-2 last season, reaching the second round of the playoffs. So a team that's got some playoff experience here in recent years, has some conference championship experience, and has kind of cemented itself maybe as the leader in the MIAA, at least over the last couple of years. in front of Northwest Missouri State.
Yeah, I think in the last couple of years in particular, I think they've taken that step forward. I think you really look at 2022 and the tough game that they gave us here at Ferris State. They've really kind of stepped forward, and Northwest Missouri is saying, hey, don't forget about us just yet, because we still got an opportunity to make a move here as well in a very strong conference. And so, but Pittsburgh State certainly is really kind of been carrying that mantle for the MIAA of late. And so they are looking for a big win in week 0.
Of course, we'll flip the script here to the Ferris State side. We'll talk more about the Bulldog team coming up in the Johnson Automotive pregame show, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday night from Pittsburgh, Kansas. Kickoff 8:05 p.m. Eastern for the season opener for the Bulldogs. But this Ferris State team, we've seen them throughout fall camp, led by 2 talented quarterbacks who complement each other well in Carson Golker and Trinidad Chambliss.
Yeah, and the Bulldogs knew coming back into this preseason camp that they knew that certainly Carson Golker had gotten a lot of experience the last couple of years, and you're feeling really good about his continued growth. And so then you look at what Trinidad Chambliss has done, and really he's had a great offseason. When you think of winter workouts, you think of spring practice, the spring game, through the summer, and then into preseason camp. And I think Trinidad Chambliss is a name that people aren't quite as familiar with, but I think they're going to be as this season goes along. And so when you look at the way that the Bulldogs run their offense, Rob, you really need to have 2 reliable quarterbacks, and the Bulldogs feel they have that.
Of course, Ferris State coming into the year with some key playmakers. Tyrese Hunt-Thompson is one of the wideouts. Brady Rose returning in the slot. Just a couple of the key names. Offensive backfield, the Bulldogs feel like they've kind of reloaded there. You got Markel King and Zamir Knighton along with James Kobe coming back at running back, but they've added Zach Ahern, who changed positions once again here for Ferris State, who really brings another dimension, and Cannon Katzer, who's looked really sharp here in camp, a transfer from Washington State.
Yeah, when you think of what the Bulldogs have been able to add to that running back position, you feel really good about that. And then, moving some players around. You mentioned Zach Ahern going in there, very physical, very fast runner. But then you look at what the Bulldogs already had coming back anyway. And so they feel like this is a position of strength for the Bulldogs this year. And I think you're going to see a little opportunity, maybe a little bit more of an opportunity to have more of a traditional running game than maybe they've had in the past. But the Bulldogs are going to be very dangerous. The quarterbacks run, the slot receivers run. Everybody can run the ball in this Ferris State offense. And so that's exciting because we know the Bulldogs want to control the line of scrimmage and run the football.
Of course, Ferris State will try to do so behind a veteran offensive line. A lot of guys that have really grown up in the program, and some names that have seen a lot of action here on the field for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this offensive line, just a couple of years ago, we were talking about how young they are, and now you look at it and they're starting to get that experience and they're starting to get that confidence. They're really got the buy-in that they need to have, and they're starting to play like it. And I'm excited about what this offensive line is going to be able to do this year. I expect them to take another big step forward. And when you have that strong offensive line, you're going to have the ability to run the football, and you're going to have the ability to pass protect because the Bulldogs are going to have some weapons on the outside. You mentioned Tyrese Hunt-Thompson on the outside, and obviously going to be a great player coming in. Brady Rose, you mentioned in the slot. But the Bulldogs feel like that receiving core is really growing and developing, and there's going to be some names that are going to potentially emerge for the Bulldogs as we look ahead to this season.
Of course, the offensive line, never one that wants to get credit, but we're going to mention a few of the names. Bryce George, preseason All-American for the Bulldogs. Travis Miracle, another veteran for Ferris State. Bob and Tim Anderson back on the offensive line. Jarvis Wyndham at center. Lawrence Attar, who's had some accolades as well as one of the guards here in the Ferris State lineup. So just a few of the names to really look out for here on the offensive line.
Yeah, Bryce George is the name I think that's going to jump out to a lot of people. But, your offensive line really functions well when they function as a unit. And Coach Parker's done a really good job with those guys to really get them working together. And Coach Parker, traditionally has been able to throw offensive line in there at waves to keep them fresh and to keep that pressure on. And so this is a good group of offensive linemen that are excited to really be the horses that really drive this team this year, especially in terms of running the football, which they really want to do.
Flipping the script over to the defensive side, where Ferris State returns a strong presence up front, especially on the inside. Deron Irving Bay, Victor Nielsen, Jake Plamondon, some of the key names on the interior of the defensive line. Bulldogs will have some new defensive ends. Sheldon Cage back is one of those guys, but a couple of young guys that have seen a lot of action here in fall camp. Ralph Carter, along with Tim Allen, some transfer names that we'll see over the course of the year. Then you move to the linebacker level where we've already kind of talked about Konnor, Jason, and Cepha, those three guys kind of leading the way. And then in the secondary, the Bulldogs with some young players that'll see their action for the first time, perhaps. Saw a couple of those guys late last year, Alston Ware, Lamont Gordon, who played as true freshman. The Bulldogs returned Colby Brown in the defensive secondary, Justin Payout, Jacarvis Alexander back off an injury as well. Just a few of the names here for the Bulldogs.
You mentioned let's starting with the defensive line, and certainly the interior is going to have a lot of names that people are very familiar with. You just listed them right there. The Bulldogs maybe going to have some surprises. I think the defensive ends, I think, are going to maybe surprise some people. I think that they're going to be pretty good there. Obviously you got to stay healthy, and that's going to be a big key. We talked about the linebacker core and certainly a lot of experience back there, and it was going to be experience anyway. And then you bring in Konnor back, and now all of a sudden you become even more experienced. And then the secondary, one person I want to point out in particular, Jacarvis Alexander, coming back and missed a huge chunk of last season, and I know that he's going to be really motivated. He's looked really good in preseason, as well as a number of other guys. And so the Bulldogs feel like they're going to be pretty solid at all three levels of that defense.
Of course, they hope to be solid in all three phases as well. On Saturday night at Pittsburgh State, kicking game looks pretty solid with Mitch Middleton back. Ethan Sosson is one of the punters. And the Bulldogs have some depth at those positions as well. You got Brady Rose, who we mentioned earlier during camp, kind of does it all on special teams here for the Bulldogs.
Brady Rose does a little bit of everything. And I don't know, he might be the Travis Hunter of Division II. I mean, because he just does a little bit of everything. And so maybe he'll try his hand at defense at some point as well. But, the kicking game looks pretty good. Middleton is, working on that kicking game as well. He's already been a great kickoff kicker. And so, he's looking pretty good as well. And then, I think the punting game is looking pretty solid as well. Coach Sugars has really done a great job with that group. And there's a lot of love there with that kicking group with Coach Sugars. And they've been able to bond really well, get some depth. And I think kicking game is going to really be a solid piece of this Bulldog special teams unit, as well as the Bulldog team overall.
This is the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show, presented by Two Hats Ranch. And welcome back to the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show. Rob Bentley and Sandy Gholston with you, joined by the athletic director here at Ferris State, Steve Brockelbank, to talk more about Bulldog football. And Steve, great to have you here on the first episode today.
Yeah, fun to be here. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I know, obviously, football season brings a lot of excitement with school back in session here at Ferris State this week. What's it like just knowing that the team's going to be ready to take the field coming up here on Saturday night?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? All of a sudden it's here. Like, you're in here all summer and you're thinking about it and you're preparing for it athletically. And then players show up on August 6th. And all of a sudden I got up this morning. I'm like, wow, it's game week. Like, we're going somewhere Friday, so we're hopping on a plane Friday into Pitt State. So, yeah, it kind of creeps up on you in a way, and it goes so fast once it gets started. Once we play Saturday, you're gonna blink and we're gonna be at the holidays, right? So that's how quick fall goes. But no, it's really exciting. It's just a ton of energy in the building, I think, and I know we're here to talk about football, but to see a couple teams compete already over the weekend just in their scrimmages, fall's here and it's time to go.
I know, being a football guy, you've had a chance to be out there and watch a few practices. What have you seen from this team so far during preseason camp?
Well, they're highly competitive, right? And I think that's a trademark of our teams. You watch them practice, and they practice as hard as they're going to play on a Saturday. And I know Tony's talked about that, right, often, that he has to sometimes tone it down a little bit because guys get so intense. We have, that level of competitiveness built into that program and built into that culture. So I see that right away. I see some guys that can just flat out run. So I know we have some speed. And then we have some size. Our offensive line looks really good. We've got some older guys and some returners. And I know in the past that's we were young and kind of struggled a little bit there. And you look at the D line and we look deep at the defensive line or the front four. And then you look at the linebackers. You had Konnor on here earlier, and we can move and cover some ground. So it's gonna be fun to watch us play.
I know you were an offensive line guy. A lot of those offensive linemen we have coming back have really gained a lot of experience. And what's it like seeing that group, become more seasoned and more experienced?
They're fun. I like their interviews. I know that. I like Bob Anderson telling me how nasty they're going to be. So, But yeah, I think, for those guys, when you coach the offensive line, it really is about a little bit of age is important, right? And experience is really important at that position. And I know it is at a lot of positions, but I certainly think at the offensive line it is. You don't have an opportunity as a young player to see everything you need to see when you walk into a game. And as you play, you begin to see all those different, all the different pressures that are coming your way, the different fronts, the different movements, and how you're going to react and respond to those. And so the more you play and the more you play with that group of guys, just the better you're going to be. So having a more seasoned veteran offensive line is certainly going to be important this season.
And when you look at this team's growth, coming into preseason camp, and you're right, preseason camp, it felt like it started. They unpacked and had some meetings and first practice, and then they were in pads, and now we're in game week, and it's just gone by so fast. But let's talk about before that, this summer, because the coaches got a lot of commitment from a lot of guys that were here this summer and put in a lot of work. And how does that help bond a team and get a team prepared for preseason camp and then the season?
Yeah, we're fortunate here, Sandy. I think in comparison to a lot of other Division II schools, in that a lot of our student athletes stay on campus. And I know they do it some other places, but I just don't know if they do in the numbers that we have here. That goes really for a lot of our sports, not just football. But I think that's critically important. Relationships matter, right? The relationships in that locker room, how those guys gel together, how they get along, I think really goes a long ways. Your willingness to fight and battle for another individual often depends on the quality of that relationship you have with those people. And these guys develop, and the summer is really the time when they get a chance to do that, right? They're busy, but they're not as busy. So they have more time to sit around, spend some time learning about each other. So I just think, I think that's important. And I'm glad we have a lot of student athletes that choose to stay up on campus. And then obviously they can take advantage of fantastic facility here, yes. Right? And we hired a new strength coach, and he is just, he's doing an awesome job, Colton. So I don't think we could ask for anything better there. So an opportunity to work with him during the summer. Then they also get on the track, do some conditioning work, right? Because I don't know, I think about coaching the offensive line. Those guys usually love to lift and they hate to run, right? So that's just the nature of the beast for those guys. And a lot of times your receivers and DBs are kind of the opposite, rather run and lift. And so this way, if you have them up on campus, you're ensuring that both those things are happening, because that strength coach is going to make sure that they're taking care of both those areas, right? They're conditioning their body. They're running, but they're also in the weight room doing the things they need to do to get their body ready for the impact that they're about ready to experience here over the next 3 months.
And one of the things that when you look at this Ferris State program, and Konnor mentioned it a little bit when we were talking to him, some of the familiar faces he saw from when he was here in his first run with the Bulldogs, which included 2 national championships. We've been able to keep this coaching staff together. Talk a little bit about that, because coaching staff, especially position coaches, can be a little transient, and you have some guys coming and going constantly. How has this staff been able to stay together, and how much has that meant to the program? Yeah,
I think that's huge, right? And you're right. It is a rarity, I think, at any level, but particularly Division II level, because usually guys are like, hey, how do I get that next job? How do I get to the Division I stop? Or how do, in the case of our coordinators, how do I become a head coach? Because they clearly all have the resumes now that will allow them to go and get those jobs should they want to go and get those jobs. They've won a lot of games here. We're the premier Division II football program in the country. And so those guys, from a resume standpoint, experience standpoint, are in a really, really good position if they want to take advantage of those opportunities. But I think it's a credit to Coach Anise, his ability to keep his staff together. I think he recognizes rewarding those guys, ensuring that they have a good quality of life, and I think that's really important. But at the same time, making sure that they have a lot of fun coaching football, right? So. And I give President Pink a lot of credit, too, because he's worked with us to try to make sure that we can retain our coaches. Because you look at our staff, not just our football staff, but all of our coaches across our athletic department, yes. We've been able to retain a lot of them. And that's a credit to his support and the university's support of athletics to be able to keep those people in place. But it's huge with the football staff, because one thing in football that's I think is at least in my opinion, different than other sports is as a head football coach, when you're the head basketball coach, and Bronx might disagree with me, but you're on the court, you can kind of see everything happening, and you can manage everything. So if you have an assistant coach that's not quite where you want them, you can easily step in, or you can see what that coach is doing, and you can probably hear what they're saying to their players. In football, that's not the case. You know, you got all these position coaches all over the field. They're having separate meetings with their players. They're way off in another part of the field coaching and teaching, and you're coaching a position. And so you really depend on those guys to know what they're doing and do a good job. And he has a staff that he can count on. He knows them. He knows how they coach. He knows what they're going to coach, how they're going to say it. And so you bring in new people, all of a sudden you're like, I think they're a really good position coach, but I'm not sure. And, you're not going to have the ability to be there with them. You're not going to be in the offensive line position meeting room if you're coaching these because, you're going to be in the quarterback room, right? So that's just the nature of it. And so I think keeping a football staff together, one that you can trust is really important. And he's been able to do that. So it's a credit to Coach Anise and all those guys. I mean, they just gel well. So they must be having fun, right? I mean, you don't go to work somewhere and stay together, because that's the other part. You want to enjoy the guys you work with if you're a football coach.
No doubt.
Right? These guys spend hours, man. You better like those dudes that you're hanging out with, because you're going to be with them.
Meetings, buses,
oh man, 12,
trips.
16 hours a day, right? Like, you got to enjoy each other. So, and they do.
Steve, I know obviously going into this game on Saturday night, a lot of preparation that goes into this, not only in terms of the football staff, but the administrative staff. Maybe just talk about the arrangements that have to take place to make a trip like this happen here in week 0.
Yeah, and credit to you. So thank you to you, Rob, because I know you do a lot in terms of just getting the communications out and preparing things to travel. It's not easy because you're, one thing about you and Sandy is, we don't have a separate broadcasting group, right? You're the communications guy and the marketing people and the broadcasting people. So there's a lot of work that goes in for you guys just to get to the game. And then I got to give Sarah Higley a lot of credit. She does a lot of work on the back end. She was doing it today. She works with Coach Faust and the football staff to try to help organize travel, especially in these cases where we're taking flights, right? There's a lot of information from all the way from body weight to birth date to the weight of the equipment we're taking. And so a lot of work on that, hotels, cars, rental cars, and then we're bringing a U-Haul down with the equipment. And so it's a pretty big undertaking to move, a group of, I don't know what our final number is going to be, 70 players, staff, and some administration. We're probably, 110, 120 people that we're going to load up and run down to Kansas, and then, turn around and get them back all within not a little over 24 hours, but we're kind of in and out of there pretty quick. But that's a lot of movement in a short period of time.
And finally here, before we let you go, I know this is the game that everyone's focused on Saturday night, getting the season started right, but then right back at home for back-to-back home games against Lake Erie and Ashland. Going to be nice to play a couple night games here in September.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. I'm looking forward to the night games. I'm looking forward to being back home. Like you said, Lake Erie and then Ashland, bring a couple Ohio teams here onto campus. And night games to me are always fun, right? Especially usually the weather's nice. You got a beautiful evening. And people just seem to really like coming to Top Taggart in the evening. Lights are on, and it just has a different feel to it. So, no, I'm excited to have those teams in there. And Ashland obviously will be not to knock down Lake Erie, but we know Ashland has been a perennial power, and so they're coming in here, and that'll be another highly contested football game, I would suspect. And the home opener against Lake Erie, people will just be excited to have football back. So I think we'll have a really big crowd, and it should be a fun evening.
Well, Steve, thanks for the time, and great to have you here on the first episode of the Bulldog Blitz football radio show, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Back on the Bulldog Blitz football radio show, the voice of the Bulldogs, Rob Bentley, alongside Sandy Gholston, for our final segment here as we get ready for kickoff on Saturday night, the season opener down in Pittsburgh, Kansas. We'll have all the call for you on Sunday 97.3 and online at ferrisstatebulldogs.com. Pre-game coverage will begin on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 8 p.m. Kickoff or shortly thereafter out in Kansas. Going to be a warm one on Saturday night, I'm sure, out in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Hour and a half or so away from Kansas City, and the Bulldogs will actually be flying into Springfield, Missouri, which is about an hour away.
Well, we have a lot of experience with these early season games. Those first games of the year, from a weather standpoint, they can be doozies. We've had some good ones. I think we've talked many times about one that we had at St. Francis and one that we had at McKendree, and so. Dress appropriately and make sure you drink some water because it's going to be a warm one out there. And but it's going to be exciting. I think getting that stadium full and just the energy that's going to be in the stadium and in week 0, kicking off with such a marquee matchup. It's just going to be a lot of fun.
Of course, the Bulldogs will return home the next 2 weeks, hosting Lake Erie in the home opener September 7th. Tickets for that game on sale, ferrisstatebulldogs.com/tickets. Some changes that'll happen in terms of traffic flow and ticket prices coming into the season. More to be announced here this week at ferrisstatebulldogs.com. They'll host Ashland on September 14th in game number 2 at home, the third game of the year for the Bulldogs. Both games will kick off at 6 p.m. We mentioned it with Athletic Director Steve Brockelbank. Nice to have a couple night games here in the month of September, and really getting this week 0 game at Pittsburgh State allowed the Bulldogs really to play a few more home games here in the month of September.
Well, it's exciting. I mean, we've both been around for a long time, and when you get those early season night games, and Steve talked about that. It's just something about a night game that just really gets that energy flowing a little bit, and so. It's going to be exciting to have those two home games, and obviously people are going to look to the Ashland game as being a tough game as it typically is between these two schools, and certainly that'll be one to look at for the national people that are going to be keeping a close eye. But it's just really fun. Those first games at home are just going to be fantastic. Should be great crowds.
Of course, Ferris State coming into the year, some high expectations, and this has been a team that's really been motivated and fueled, I think, since the end of last season.
Yeah, I think there's no question. I think when you think of 8-3, and that's for a lot of people, it's kind of like, wow, we're 8-3, and but you look at who we played and who we lost to. We lost to 2 very good teams, and so I think coming into this year, I think there's a lot of motivation for not only the coaches, but I think really for a lot of the players. I mean, they have been having to wait a long time, had to watch the playoffs last year, the rest of the playoffs last year, and had to take that into winter workouts, into spring practice, and then into the summer. And so that's been a driving force for a lot of those guys. And I think we've really had a chance to see that during the summer with all the guys working out at the stadium and in the weight room. And then what they've been able to do coming into preseason practice. And they had a really effective preseason camp, and they have a lot to feel good about. But the work's still continuing.
I know the Bulldogs going on the road into a hostile environment, something that a lot of the veterans have kind of been through before. Games at Grand Valley State the last couple of years. You had the Montana game last year, and this is a team that's really under Coach Anise been a team that's wanted to get up for challenges like this.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, when you think of that game against Montana, and I had a chance to get down there on the field late in that game, and it was loud, it was packed in there, and the Bulldogs played really well in that game against Montana, and feel like if they'd done a few things maybe better, they would have had a chance to spring what would have been a monumental upset. And so they're not going to be in awe of the environment at Pittsburgh State, but at the same time they have to be ready for that environment because it's going to be tough, and Pittsburgh State's going to come out flying all over the field. And so but again, the Bulldogs do have experience with tough environments, mentioning Montana and obviously a couple of games at Grand Valley last year.
Of course, Pitt State going to break out new black uniforms here for this game. Blackout down in Pittsburgh, Kansas. I know a number of Bulldog fans are planning on making the trip down there. If you need tickets, log on to ferrisstatebulldogs.com. There's some ticket information for the game at Pitt State, but should be a hostile environment. The 100th season of Kearney Smith Stadium, from what I read. So should be a fun atmosphere and a great way to kick off the year.
Hey, fans, if you're thinking about getting some tickets, don't delay. Get those tickets early. Get your hotel arrangements early if you need to, and be ready to come in and wear red and cheer on the Bulldogs because it's going to be a great atmosphere, and it should be. It should be. This is what Division II football is all about, and matchups like this should be the norm in the regular season, particularly early in the preseason when you have these opportunities.
Of course, we'll get it the next 2 years. Pitt State going to pay the return visit to Ferris State, scheduled for 2025. And this game on Saturday night going to be televised in the Kansas City area, also on the MIAA Network pay-per-view. So log on, links available at ferrisstatebulldogs.com on the football schedule page. Watch party at Buffalo Wild Wings in Big Rapids. And again, we'll have all the coverage for you right here on the Bulldog Sports Network and Sunny 97.3. This has been a fun first episode of the Bulldog Blitz football radio show presented by Two Hats Ranch. Big thanks goes out to Two Hats Ranch, Colby Bettis, and his entire family for helping make this broadcast possible, and looking forward to continuing this each and every Wednesday night from 6 to 7 p.m. here on Sunny 97.3.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, and anytime you get a chance to chop it up, talk a little bit about Bulldog football. And I'm excited about the guests that we had today. And I'm looking forward to the guests that we're going to have throughout the season, just to keep this thing going and to give another opportunity to absorb Bulldog football for the fans.
Thanks to Konnor, senior linebacker, for being on the show here today. Athletic Director Steve Brockelbank. Big thanks to Steve Masters back at the Sunny 97.3 studios. Got to give a shout out to Brody Kaiser, our production specialist here helping produce this show. Here, of course, not only can you hear it on Sunny 97.3 and FerrisStateBulldogs.com, live episodes in a podcast format as well on Spotify, on YouTube, with video production here of the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show. Of course, we'll be back again next week, hoping to talk about a Bulldog victory coming off week 0 at Pittsburgh State.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to make that road trip, and looking forward to that game. And I'm just looking forward to being back in the booth and calling some college football. I mean, it's just been way too long since we had a chance to call college football. So I know I'm excited. I know you're excited. The fans are excited. We've seen how much they've been talking, and we're all looking forward to that road trip to Pittsburgh State and hopefully coming back with a Bulldog victory. Speaking
of Brody Kaiser, got to give a plug out for Off the Ice Season 2, which will return to Sunny 97.3 on Tuesday nights at 6 o'clock. Of course, this show will air on Wednesday nights throughout the year at 6 p.m. as well. So a lot of coverage of Bulldog athletics. Won't be long before we have hockey season starting, along with some of the other Bulldog sports. But nice to really continue the coverage we've been able to expand here on the Bulldog Sports Network.
It's exciting. I mean, we know that Bulldog Nation really loves Ferris State athletics, and there's a lot of pride there. We've had a lot of success, and this is another opportunity, another way for us, another few ways for us to really be able to bring the action to the fans. And so it's just an exciting opportunity, and hopefully the fans will tune in.
That'll do it. For my partner, Sandy Gholston, Rob Bentley with you. This has been week 1 of the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show, presented by Two Hats Ranch, right here on the Voice of the Bulldogs, Sunny 97.3.